I do appreciate that. All right, 2 weekends ago, we were looking at Daniel 7. We did a lot of reading in Daniel 7, Revelation 13 and 17. Looking at this idea of the beast. So we read that the beast represents kingdoms and started correlating the different books, different accounts. There's the fourth beast that we started looking at, which all accounts refer to, and we looked at the characteristics of the beast, which were, it marked it as a very strong kingdom, very dreadful, horrible. We briefly discussed what makes a nation strong or a kingdom strong, and then we looked at the fact that this beast, this kingdom, will be allowed to make war with the saints and with the nation of Israel. So we looked at Revelation 19. We brought in Zechariah, Ezekiel. So Ezekiel, if you remember details, an account of this nation called Magog, led by Gog. And then we looked at the fact that this government or this nation, this fourth kingdom, as Revelation describes, receives a fatal blow, but it says it's revived. So we briefly hinted on the fact that, if the beast is a nation or a kingdom, that the system of government in it is essentially revived. We looked at the fact that the whole world, it says the whole earth will worship this nation and this king. We discussed what it means to worship. Anybody remember what does it mean to worship something?
Ascribe worth and honor.
Yeah, to ascribe the highest worth to subjugate yourself to it, right? So doesn't necessarily, it's not allocated to the religious, right? It can be anything. So just keep that in mind as we, discuss this fourth kingdom and the mind state and attitude of the nations regarding it. And then Revelation 13 further details this beast by describing a second beast that comes out of the earth, continuing the government and providing a leader that the nations will continue to worship. So this second beast will exercise the same authority as the first. It will establish the same governmental system, providing the opportunity for nations to once again worship it. Let's turn to Revelation 13. So I'll read verse 11 real quick. Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth that had two horns like those of a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. So this horn, and what does a horn represent? If you remember, a leader, yeah, a king. Okay. Verse 11, Revelation 13. So this beast, this revived beast, has two horns, and it says those horns are like that of a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. So Daniel let me remember what verse that's. Daniel only makes mention of one horn, so it's a little different. And it says in Daniel that the horn will have eyes to see and ears to, or before I butcher this, I think it's in Daniel 7. Yeah, Daniel 7 verse 8. Daniel says, while I was considering the horns, another horn sprang up among them, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked by its roots. In this horn were eyes like human eyes, and a mouth speaking arrogantly. So some similarities, right? So the horns in Revelation appear as a lamb and are given the ability to speak like the dragon, and then Daniel kind of correlates with that in having eyes and the ability to, or speaking arrogant things, right? Blasphemous things. So Revelation 18 verse 11 describes this revived beast as the 8th kingdom. And sorry, 1711. So Daniel 7:20 describes the little horn as having eyes and a mouth to speak blasphemy. So I don't, I know this is imagery, and I don't, quite understand what it represents, but I think Daniel correlates with the 2 horns in Revelation, having an appearance like that of a lamb, which I'm of the idea that it represents these leaders who will present themselves like the Messiah, right? They will take the appearance of the lamb, which I think we understand the lamb represents the Messiah, right, or Jesus. So they will present themselves in the same fashion, which is important because when we look at the figureheads within Islam, I think it'll start to correlate. And then Daniel 7:25 says the little horn will attempt to alter the seasons. And in Revelation 13:13 it says that the horn will be able to perform great miracles, even causing fire to come down from heaven, deceiving the people by its miracles. So I'm not even going to attempt to understand, what that means. These are agricultural cultures, so having the ability to alter the seasons really means you have the ability to control the economy. So that may be an aspect of it.
What was the reference in
Daniel
Daniel?
7:25. So if you can control, if you were to draw that line logically, if you're able to control the seasons, you can control when the harvest is, you can control when you plant. So in a sense, you're controlling the economy.
So, in my version it says, "You shall speak against the Most High and oppress the holy ones of the Most High, thinking to change the feast days and the law."
The times, it's a time. Seasons happen at a certain time. Zaman time. Times and decrees, or laws, statutes.
Yeah, so seasons and the law. He will attempt to alter the seasons and the law. And the holy ones will be handed over him for a time and times and a half a time. So, also since the feasts are, representative of, at least in Israel, or representative of, certain aspects of God and what He's accomplished. How would you correlate that to that? Having the ability to change or alter that?
Well, those feasts are basically holy days or periods of time that are specified by God. So it's not, I don't think it's really changing a season as in changing, when a harvest or something is accomplished, because
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting he's literally being able to change, when winter comes.
What are the miracles he's going to do? He just correlated it to
Right,
Antichrist coming and doing miracles. So
right.
why not? Why not?
I mean,
make
it could be something
snow in
to that
July?
extent, but it also could be a miraculous, economic achievement. So, go ahead.
so I think it would more correlate with, yeah, it sounds better an economic achievement versus like making it snow in July.
Well, as an engineer, I would
I mean, sure.
go
you
that
can make
route,
it snow in
but
July. I mean,
'cause
you can ski in the middle of the desert. Saudi Arabia has proven that.
Really? Okay.
It's an indoor place, but I mean, still.
I mean, they are making technological advancements to be able to accumulate clouds and rain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So also correlating, let me look here, Revelation 18.
It's actually change appointed time in the Hebrew.
Change the appointed time. And then also just draw more correlation. So in Revelation 17, so the 10 kings, it mentions hand their power over to this, their power and rule over to this 8th king, this additional horn. And in Daniel 7, it says that the little horn has the power to uproot 3 of them. So he obviously is greater in power and influence over these other kings. Okay. Oops. Nope, no problem. So I want to start correlating, or I'll provide a correlation between the different books in a more visual representation. So in Daniel, we looked at the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of. So you had the golden head, which is represented by Babylon, which is just showing the territory that Babylon controlled and just showing the growth as these kingdoms come into existence.
Is that a guess?
Is it a guess?
Yeah, are we just guessing that gold head is Babylon?
No, we already covered it.
Just
Okay.
wondering,
You flat out said, this is you.
Yeah,
right? I know.
yeah. And,
Important point.
yep. The second beast, the bear, so that was what nation? What kingdom?
Kingdom that took
Persia.
over Babylon.
Right, Medo-Persia. Daniel 8 actually says that. That's the territory that Medo-Persia controlled.
Like how each map is zoomed out just so it's a bit
Yeah.
more.
What does the third beast represent? Or the thighs of bronze? Greece, right. So that's the territory that Greece controlled. It almost looks like they just replaced Medo-Persia, right? And then you have
Sure it's less.
less of Africa, yeah. More of Greece, obviously,
He never made it through the Armenia.
yeah. Not less of the northern part of the Middle East. And then we have the fourth beast. So I'm showing the difference here. So here's the height of the Roman Empire. So that's the territory that it controlled. And then this is the progression of the of Islam. So this is the trying to remember. I should have wrote this down. Yeah, so this is the Umayyad. This is showing basically everything in dark green is solely controlled by the Umayyad Caliph towards the start of their or towards, as they were apexing. And then, so dark green is full control. The kind of turquoise color is control with, Roman influence or, integration of, there's still elements of Rome that they're dealing with. And then the blue is Rome itself. So shows how Rome was basically pushed out by the Umayyad Caliph. Yeah, yeah.
Italy's underwater.
Yeah, so they took over all of the peninsula, a lot of Asia Minor. And at this point, they hadn't yet controlled Turkey. And that comes later. And this is showing I know you can't see it, but
I know it.
yeah. So this is showing the Ottoman Empire here. So they lost Spain, but they took over the Balkans and all of Turkey. And you can see that they lost the southern part of the peninsula. And that's, if you remember, as Arabic spread and the influence of Islam, the Persians and the Turks essentially replaced the Arabs, the true Arabs, as Islamists. And so as the Ottoman Empire came into fruition, the true Arabs basically retreated back or consolidated back to almost like a Bedouin style life. So that's what happened there. So just the visual representation of the growth of each nation. Make sure I'm not missing any of my talking points here. All right. So let's correlate this to Daniel 7. So first beast, or the head, the golden head. Whoops, what happened to my arrows? So I did have arrows, so just drawing beast 1 is the head, that's Babylon Nebuchadnezzar. The bear in Daniel 7 is the, the bear or the silver chest is the second beast in Daniel 7. So that's Medo-Persia, Cyrus the Great as the head. Beast 3, the bronze thighs, is the leopard and the 4 heads in Daniel 7. So that would be Greece, Macedonia with Alexander the Great, Alexander the Fourth, Philip the Third, and Perdiccas as the represented by the heads.
Now there's 4 generals. I always think there's 4 generals.
Or 4 generals. Yeah. They,
Ptolemy and Seleucid are the 2 main ones.
okay. Yeah, that,
He divided the kingdom. When Alexander died,
right,
generals took
right.
over.
And then you have this 4th beast, or the legs of iron and the feet of iron and clay. So as Daniel says, this is a 4th dreadful beast with the 7th head, and that 7th head has 10 horns on its head, and then the 11th head rises up later. Okay, tracking so far?
The 11th horn that comes up, it displaces 3 other horns?
No. No. So Daniel, it's 1 horn. Revelation, it's 2 horns.
4th beast is different from the rest.
Yeah. Completely different. A lot of people will associate these 10 horns over the rest of the heads. But Daniel 7 specifically says, and so does Revelation 13, that these 10 horns are allocated to the last beast, the 4th beast. All right, so then let's draw lines from Daniel 7 to Revelation. So this first head, Babylon. So the vantage point of John is completely different than Daniel, right? So he has he has the foresight, right, of the nations that have come, and then God reveals, this nation that is to come. So he's, at Daniel's standpoint, what at that point, Medo-Persia was just starting to come into power. And so Medo-Persia and Greece, and then from John's standpoint, obviously he has more history to look back on. So, So the first head is Babylon, which is head 3 here. So I can't prove through, Scripture doesn't specifically say the first 2 heads are these nations, but if you remember what constitutes or what allows a nation to be considered by God as a head or a beast, it's their power, their influence, and their relationship with Israel. So if we keep that consistent, these other 2 nations in history that existed before Babylon, it makes sense to assign Assyria. Why Assyria? What was their relationship with Israel? Right. Yep. So they were
They took the northern kingdom.
they were a judgment tool, right? That God used against Israel. And then obviously Egypt, right? Egypt's had a long-standing relationship with Israel. So you have Babylon, and then you have the second head, which is the fourth head here, Medo-Persia, and then you have the fifth head, which in Revelation accumulates these four heads into one. So you have heads 3, 4, 5, and 6 are represented as head 5 in Revelation, so that'd be Greece. And then head 6 would be Rome, which, you know, at that time John was dealing with, right?
Revelation 17:10.
Revelation 17:10.
Five have fallen. One is living now, and the other is yet to come.
Yeah. So which nation was living now?
Rome.
Rome. Right. Good. Thanks. So then you have the seventh head, which matches, right? So in Daniel 7, the seventh head with 10 horns, and then Revelation, seventh head with 10 horns. And then you have the difference here. You have the single horn in Daniel, and then in Revelation 17, it talks about this second beast, which is an extension of the first beast with a revived head, and it has 2 horns. So again, I can't prove this through Scripture, but my viewpoint right now is that the first horn is the civil leader, so that would be, you know, in Islam would be the Sultan. So the Sultan was the civil leader, and then you have the second horn, which would be the religious leader or the Caliph. So, and they work in unison. And this relationship came about during the Ottoman Empire, because that's how the Turks operated. They had a sultan, and then they adopted the Caliph. Tracking so far? Okay. I thought it was worth noting too. So in Daniel chapter 2, verse 40 and 43, Daniel says that this nation of iron and feet of iron and clay says this nation will be strong as iron. So if you remember in our study of the history of the Arabs, what once was a high language used in giving oracles. So remember we talked about there was a high language within within Arabs or Muslims that was started out as a language used for giving oracles or poetry. So if you remember, the Arabs were very poetic, and oftentimes instead of holding war, they would set and wax poetic recitals at one another, and that's how they'd work. Yeah, and that's how they would battle it out. Yeah, wrap up. No. So this high language became one of the world's most widely used languages, and it was a unifier that would strengthen the Muslims. That language, coupled with the motivations and ideas of Muhammad, would become the cornerstone of Islam's strength, which would be the Quran. So this combination, the combination of mercenaries, so remember the Bedouins were essentially a people of, they were mercenaries. So they oftentimes would raid trade routes that extended from Yemen and that area to the north. And they were also hired as mercenaries to act as bodyguards by the nations. So they were very well versed in war and battle. Excuse me. So the combination of Bedouins and their mercenary tendencies and the warrior attributes of the Turks would lead to a nation that would expand faster and become stronger than most of the nations that came before it. And in fact, the Ottoman Empire was the largest empire to exist in the world at that time. And even today, it's the 7th largest empire in the world. So it was this nation as strong as iron. The kingdom, Daniel also says this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. So all the things that were key in strengthening and expanding Islam have also caused derision, corruption, and wars. So if you remember, with the passing of Muhammad and the establishment of the caliphate, derision was born among the Arabs. Do you remember why? This is when Sunni and Shia Muslims came into existence. Do you remember why the split?
Over the true lineage, the true leadership.
Right. So the first caliph was Abu Bakr, and he was supported by the Sunnis, and they supported more of a democratic process, electing a leader as caliph, not by blood or monarchy, whereas the Shia believed that Ali, who was the son-in-law of Muhammad, should have been the caliph. So they believed that it should have remained in the family. So that was the rising of Shia and Sunni. And that split in ideologies has been warring with one another since then up until present day. So that would support the brittle part. As Arabic began to be adopted by the Persians and by the Turks, the importance of the true Arabs disappeared, and by the time of the Ottoman Empire, the true Arabs, the Bedouins, had consolidated back to their homeland. So even more brittleness is the relationship between the Persians, Turks, and the Arabs. Then Daniel says, you saw iron mixed with clay. That means that they will cement their alliances by intermarriages. So if you remember, during the earliest, the earliest people to populate the peninsula were a mixed people, hence the name Arab. I think it's in, I can't believe I didn't write this down. I think it's in, let me look here. Is it Nehemiah? Did I write it down? Yeah, Nehemiah, sorry. So in Nehemiah 13:3, it even references the name Arab, which in Hebrew is Areb. So just means mixed people or mixed multitude. So even at the establishment of the Arab culture and societies, they were a mixed people. And then the Muslim world was built upon mixed people. Not only were the earliest settlers Arabs in the truest sense, but if you remember, Muhammad gave his sons and daughters to intermarriage with other Arabic tribes. So remember, there were, Saudi Arabia was encompassed many different tribes, and they all had their own societies, their own way of lives, and Muhammad pushed to intermarriage between the tribes to try to unify the people. And then later, as the true Arabs began to denote, so if you remember, true Arabs, at the early part of Arab history, true Arabs were considered the Bedouins, and then you had the more civilized metropolis type style Arabs in the south, and you had more Persian influenced Arabs in the north. And so the true Arabs were considered the Bedouins, who were isolated in the central part of Arabia. As tribes begin to intermarry, and the influence of Persia started to grow within Saudi Arabia. The peninsula started to unify, and so then what was once considered true Arab, isolated to Bedouins, started encompassing all the people on the peninsula. And so then they began to intermarry with Persia. So in order to establish relationships with Persia, and with the hope of preventing Persia's advance within the peninsula, they began intermarrying there too, as well. So just another, kind of satisfying the verses that Daniel mentions here. And that, that extends on through history. So then as the Turks came down from the area of Russia, the Turks and the Persians and the Arabs started intermarrying and, trying to further relationships with one another. So just a continuing of that process. And I am 5 minutes over. So next weekend we'll start looking at who the 10 horns are. All right? Well, it's just an educated guess. Any